Greetings, YouTube. Today we're going to talk about a trope. That trope are zombies and or walkers. Now, I have not watched a lot of films or television series about zombies in the last decade or so. At some point, about 15 years ago, my subconscious decided that zombies would represent my anxiety and my stress. So whenever I get anxious and stressful, I start having nightmares and things about zombies. It's not fun. But there has been a lot of stuff out there about this topic. Television series, lots of movies. The movies come out every single year. Dozens of films every year playing on this trope to one degree or another. But I began to ponder why people don't take a little bit deeper look at them, the mechanics and the existence of walkers. Now, the classical zombie, the actual Wudang zombie, was someone that came back from the dead as a slave. And we know that there were chemicals used and social structures that convinced people that they had died and been brought back from the dead. And so they weren't undead. They were just people that had been convinced they were dead, so they were now servants, slaves, things like that. Probably not that efficient, probably didn't happen all the time, but it's a nice story, and it got bigger over time. Then you have Night of the Living Dead from George Romero, the classic that really started the whole thing, which is in public domain. And then his establishment of the ghouls, he never called them zombies, ghouls that were slow walkers. They moved like you imagine a dead person would walk, not fast. And then Return of the Living Dead, which is one of the great zombie films of all time, in my opinion. And if I were to have a favorite, that would be it. And that established not only the fast zombies, but the brain eating. Prior to that, it was just bodies were being consumed, the whole thing, soup to nuts. Excuse the pun. But that film concentrated on the brains. Within the context of the film, the zombies wanted to eat the brains because the brains would assuage the pain of death, which was an interesting take. So that established the fast zombies. And directors have been using versions of all of them over time. I kind of like the idea of immediate death. There you move at the normal speed, but over time you get slower, slower, and slower, because we have seen lots of films want to show the terror of the zombie, the walker, so they have them decompose, which makes sense. Okay, so they want that decomposition look, but them still moving and still being in danger. And one of the reasons I think that the slow walkers are more of an existential danger as opposed to the fast ones is that the slow walkers really represent death, because no matter how far you run, how fast you run, they'll catch you because they don't have to stop. Now, most of the tropes I've seen out there is that when the walkers don't have stimuli, they go sessile. They just kind of stop. They sit or they stand or they fall down, and they remain that way until they get stimuli. They see a human, then they come up and they start chasing. So, sorry when I get tired of my face itches. So that's the thing. They don't move unless there's stimuli. So we know that stimuli is important, and different people have played with that. Some are like, they're visual, they'll go after sound. Sometimes they can be fooled by scent. They think you smell like one of them, they won't attack you. And if you move like them and you smell like them, it's possible to sneak through them and stay alive. That's a nice idea. I think that because it gives another dramatic twist to the whole process. But because they rot, decomposition takes place. We know there are biological functions going on. Rot is a biological function. One thing I don't ever think I've ever seen is bloating. Because at some stage, they should bloat to the point where they pretty much can't move. And then they should explode if they start moving, which would be disgusting. But I don't know if I've ever seen that. And again, I'm not up on a lot of the stuff, and I've never really watched any of the real classic Italian stuff, because that kind of the level of gore is not my thing. But if biological function is taking place, then all biological function should take place. What do I mean by that? Animals. Bacteria is working, that's the decomposition. So where are the flies? In the real world, within hours of death, flies show up at a corpse. And in fact, insects show up at a corpse at such regular intervals, different insects showing up at different points of the corpse's decomposition cycle, that they can be used in court to say how long a corpse has been lying out and rotting. Of course, if it's been covered or uncovered, if it's moist or dry, these things all have factors involved. But where are the insects? The insects should be devouring these things. Go watch a video of an animal corpse being devoured by insects. It's fascinating. They do a really good job. When it's done, it's bones and skin. Gone. But where are the other animals? A walker is moving meat. If society collapses, animals are going to come in and start taking advantage of walking meat. Now, if you do a realistic degree, like all dead bodies get up and walk, say, it's magic, we don't have to explain how, but all dead bodies get up and walk. That's not that many dead people. Really, it isn't. Not that many dead people are present in the United States at any one time. And if they're in the ground, they're not getting out of the ground. They're not getting out of those coffins. They're not digging their way out. Lots of corpses, the fresher ones, are in vaults on top of being in coffins. They're not a danger to us at all. And there aren't that many corpses in morgues and hospitals and in funeral homes. There just aren't. And there's more than 300 million guns in America. No, they're not a danger. We would overcome them in a heartbeat. There would be panic. We would take care of it. And if anyone who walks down the street and comes at you and isn't talking, you just shoot them. There'll be a lot of murders, but there will also be a complete eradication of the walkers. So the United States, at least, isn't going to be a danger. It really isn't. 48 hours after the first one wakes up, they're all going to be gone. But if you have a situation, for example, like the abandoned, anyone over the age of 23 instantly becomes a walker. You die, you get up. Yeah, it's a metaphor for moving out of adolescence and into adulthood. I get it. But it was a pretty good series, the part I read. I recommend it. I didn't read all of it, but I read a good chunk at the beginning. I like the art as well. So let's say we have lots of walkers. Total collapse of society. Small pockets of humanity still remain, which means the animals are going to take over. Dogs are going to go feral, the larger breeds. All the smaller breeds, they're not going to make it. But the larger breeds, they're going to go feral. And they're going to tear walkers to pieces. Bears, big cats, the medium-sized cats, like bobcats, lynx, even house cats will go after them to a certain degree. Their meat. Not to mention the avians, buzzards, crows, ravens. They're going to get pulled apart in no time. Then also, I don't know how many people have ever talked about winter. They're going to freeze. And if they're sessile lying on the ground, they'll get covered with snow. You may not see them, but lots of them will be very obvious. Before the snow comes, they'll freeze. And they're really easy to take out when they're frozen. Because guess what they don't have? Internal heat. Guess what you do? Internal heat. And I've never seen nature play a part in this story. In fact, I can only think of one animal I ever saw. It was one of the Romero movies. I can't remember if it was Dawn or Day of the Dead. They showed an alligator, going after or going in amongst the zombies. And that made perfect sense. Because, again, slow walking meat, gator's going to love that. So, why don't they do that? Is it just because they want to perpetuate the whole walker risk? They don't want to eliminate them in a heartbeat, which they probably would be. It's going to be much more Shaun of the Dead than The Walking Dead. Because Shaun of the Dead was, 48 hours after the disaster hit, it was no longer an issue. We accommodated to the situation because humans are good at killing and we're good at adapting to things, even horrible things. So what have you seen that showed nature taking the walkers out? Because I'm not up on a lot of the modern uh, media on this, so maybe you can help me. But let's talk about walkers and why Mother Nature isn't a bigger threat.